My future son-in-law asked about my late husband's restaurant empire 3 times during his first visit. I smiled and changed the subject. By his 6th visit, he'd asked 11 times. On the morning of my daughter's engagement party, she pulled me into the pantry, pressed a cocktail napkin into my hand, and whispered, "Mom, don't react. Read it when he leaves." I unfolded it later in the bathroom. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. "Mom, I found something in his bag. He's not who he says he is." 48 hours later, I stood in front of 80 guests at the Harborview Inn and made a choice that would either save my daughter or destroy our relationship forever. I chose the truth. Thanks for tuning in. If stories about family protection, courage, and justice resonate with you, please like and subscribe to Sapphire Revenge. It helps us bring you more compelling real-life narratives. Comment below with your thoughts or where you're watching from. Disclaimer: while characters and settings are fictional creations for storytelling purposes, the themes of elder abuse awareness, financial predators, and family protection are unfortunately very real. My name is Margaret Holloway, and for 34 years I was the head nurse at Camden Harbor Medical Center in Maine. I retired at 62, not because I was tired, but because my husband Richard died and the hospital hallways felt too quiet without his voice on the other end of the phone asking what I wanted for dinner. Richard Holloway built a seafood restaurant in 1989 with $6,000, a lease on a waterfront shack, and a stubbornness that could outlast a nor'easter. By the time he died of pancreatic cancer at 65, that one restaurant had become a chain of 4 along the Maine coast. The Holloway Table. You might have seen them if you've ever driven Route 1 between Camden and Bar Harbor. Blue awnings, white clapboard, lobster rolls that made grown men weep. Richard ran the business, I ran the family. Our daughter Sophie grew up bussing tables, folding napkins, learning that money came from early mornings and aching feet, not from wishing. She'd gone to design school in Boston, become an interior designer, built her own small firm. At 31, she was independent, talented, and still healing from a relationship 2 years prior where a boyfriend had slowly isolated her from friends before she'd finally walked away. So when she called me on a Tuesday evening in March, breathless and laughing, saying she'd met someone named Ryan, I felt cautious hope. "He's different, Mom. He's an architect. He designs sustainable buildings. He actually listens when I talk." Ryan Prescott arrived at my house on a Friday afternoon in April. I lived in the same salt box Colonial Richard and I had bought in 1991, perched on a bluff overlooking Penobscot Bay. 3 bedrooms, a garden Richard had planted, and a view that made real estate agents leave their business cards in my mailbox every spring. Ryan was 35, tall, with the kind of easy confidence that filled a room. Sandy hair, green eyes, a handshake that lingered just long enough. He wore a linen shirt rolled to the elbows and smiled like he'd been practicing in a mirror, which I'd later learn he had. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, "Sophie talks about this house constantly. I can see why. The craftsmanship is remarkable." "Thank you," I said. "My husband rebuilt most of it himself." He nodded, eyes sweeping the living room with a designer's attention. "Or an appraiser's. How long have you been here?" 33 years. "And the restaurants?" "Sophie mentioned your husband built quite a legacy. 4 locations along the coast?" There it was. Visit 1, question 1. I poured him iced tea and changed the subject to architecture. Over the next 3 months, Ryan visited 6 times. Each time, the questions came. How many employees did the restaurants have? Had I considered selling? What was waterfront commercial property worth in Camden these days? Who managed the business now that Richard was gone? Sophie always jumped in to explain, "Ryan's an architect, Mom. He thinks about buildings and property values professionally. He can't help it." Maybe. But 34 years of nursing had taught me to read vital signs, and Ryan's vitals were off. His pupils dilated slightly when money came up. His breathing changed when I mentioned the restaurants. These were signs of excitement, not curiosity. The body doesn't lie, even when the mouth does. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. A retired nurse with too much time and too many true crime podcasts. Richard would have known immediately. He'd had a gift for reading people, honed by decades of hiring line cooks and negotiating leases. "Trust the symptoms, Margaret," he used to say when I'd come home troubled by a patient's story that didn't match their chart. "The body always tells the truth first." Richard's voice was so clear in my memory that some mornings I'd answer it out loud before remembering. By July, Ryan had proposed. A ring from a jeweler in Portland, a sunset proposal on the beach at Acadia. Sophie called me crying with joy. I said all the right things. But that night I sat in Richard's study, surrounded by his recipe notebooks and framed photos of the restaurants, and I dialed Patricia Eng. Patricia had been Richard's attorney for 20 years and mine since he died. She'd structured the trusts, managed the business succession, navigated probate with a precision that made me grateful every day. "Tell me I'm being ridiculous," I said when she answered. "You're calling me at 9 on a Thursday night. You're not being ridiculous. You're worried." I told her everything. The questions about property, the restaurant inquiries, the way Ryan's eyes cataloged rooms like he was taking inventory. Patricia was quiet for 10 seconds. Then she said, "How fast did he propose?" 4 months. "And Sophie's previous relationship ended how?" "Badly." She was isolated, vulnerable. "Margaret, I've practiced estate law for 28 years. I've seen this pattern before. Let me make some calls. Give me a week." I spent that week acting normal while my stomach churned. Ryan came for Sunday dinner. He helped me clean up, asking about the house's property tax assessment while he dried dishes. I told him I didn't remember the number. He smiled and let it drop, but I saw his jaw tighten for just a fraction of a second. Patricia called the following Thursday morning. Her voice had the tone I recognized from when she'd told me about complications in Richard's estate. "Margaret, can you come to my office today? You found something." I found a pattern. Patricia's office overlooked Camden Harbor. She closed the door, lowered the blinds, and placed a folder on her desk thick enough to make my chest hurt. "Ryan Prescott is a real person," she said. "Licensed architect in Massachusetts. Graduated from Northeastern in 2013. Worked at a firm in Boston until 2019. Then he quit, and here's where it gets interesting." She opened the folder. "Catherine Wallace, 29, daughter of a hotel chain owner in Kennebunkport. Ryan dated her for 5 months in 2020. Engaged in October. By December, he'd attended 2 family financial meetings and had detailed knowledge of their property holdings. He disappeared in January. The family paid him $150,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement and go away." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Michelle Chen, 30, daughter of a commercial fishing fleet owner in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Ryan dated her 4 months in 2022, engaged in July. Same pattern. He attended estate planning sessions, asked detailed questions about fleet valuations and waterfront property, then vanished. The Chen family paid $200,000. 2 women, I whispered. "At least 2. Patricia leaned forward. Both daughters had lost a parent recently. Catherine's mother died in 2019. Michelle's father had a severe stroke in 2021. Ryan targets women whose families are grieving, women without the full parental safety net." "Sophie lost Richard 2 years ago," I said. "Yes. And your family owns 4 waterfront restaurants, waterfront property, and you live modestly. He probably estimates your net worth at 2 or 3 million based on public records." The actual number was considerably higher. Richard's life insurance, the business valuation, the property portfolio, his investments, it totaled just over $8 million, but we'd lived simply. Richard drove a 15-year-old truck. I still bought clothes at LL Bean Outlet. Sophie had no idea about the full amount because Richard believed wealth should be invisible. "The moment people see money, they stop seeing you," he'd said. Ryan thought he was circling a comfortable widow with some restaurant property. He had no idea what he was actually circling. "What do we do?" I asked. Patricia pulled out a business card. "Claire Donovan, private investigator, former state police. She's the best in New England, discreet and thorough. Hire her," I said without hesitation. Claire arrived 2 days later in a gray SUV that blended into every parking lot in Maine. She was early 50s, calm in the way former law enforcement people get after decades of seeing the worst. She didn't waste time. "I'm going to install cameras in your home," she said, walking through my kitchen. Motion activated, encrypted, legal under Maine law. Patricia confirmed it with a judge. She placed 3 cameras, one behind the ceramic rooster on the kitchen shelf, one inside the smoke detector in the hallway, one tucked into the bookshelf in the living room. Invisible. I'm also going to run a deep background on Ryan Prescott, she said. Financial records, travel history, known associates. If he's done this twice, he has infrastructure. People who help him. Maybe someone who scouts targets. She paused at the kitchen window, looking out at the bay. Mrs. Holloway, people like this don't stop. They escalate. Each time they learn what works and what doesn't. With Catherine, he left quietly. With Michelle, he pushed harder before leaving. Sophie might be the one where he tries to go all the way. All the way meaning what? Meaning marriage. Legal access to community property. Or worse, establishing control over your finances through medical or legal manipulation. My hands went cold. Claire's findings came in waves. The first wave confirmed what Patricia had found. Ryan Prescott had a pattern. Target grieving families, charm the daughter, get engaged fast, attend financial meetings, then either disappear with a payout or push for more. The second wave was worse. Ryan had a partner. His college roommate, Ethan Drake, posed as his friend at family gatherings, his business associate at meetings, his reference when anyone checked. Ethan had been at the Wallace engagement party. He'd been at the Chen family dinner. And he was coming to Sophie's engagement party as Ryan's best man. They work as a team, Claire said. Ryan is the face. Ethan does the research. He finds the families, estimates the wealth, identifies the vulnerable daughter. Then Ryan moves in. The third wave nearly broke me. Claire had cultivated a source, a former associate of Ryan's who'd had a falling out. Through this source, she learned that Ryan's plan for our family was different from the others. He wasn't planning to disappear with a payout. He was planning to stay. He wants the restaurants, Claire said flatly. He's been researching Maine marital property law. If he marries Sophie, he could claim an interest in any assets acquired during the marriage. But that's not his main play. What's his main play? You. Claire met my eyes. He's been researching conservatorship law. How to establish legal guardianship over an elderly family member. How to petition a court to declare someone mentally incompetent. He wants control of your finances, Margaret. Your estate, your properties, everything Richard built. The room swam. I gripped the table. There's more, Claire said gently. My source says Ryan has purchased medications online. Sedatives. The plan is to administer them to you gradually, document confusion and instability, and then file for emergency conservatorship claiming you're a danger to yourself. I thought of every cup of tea Ryan had made me, every glass of wine he'd poured at dinner, every time he'd said, "Here, let me get that for you, Mrs. Holloway." How do we catch him? I asked. We create an opportunity, Claire said, and we don't waste it. The plan took 2 weeks to build. Patricia handled the legal framework. Claire handled surveillance. Dr. James Whitfield, my physician for 12 years, provided medical documentation confirming my full cognitive health and agreed to test any samples we collected. We set the trap for a Wednesday evening, 3 days before the engagement party. I invited Ryan for dinner, just the two of us. Sophie was supposedly in Boston meeting a client. Ryan arrived at 6 with a bottle of wine and that smile. We ate baked haddock and roasted potatoes. He complimented the cooking, asked about the restaurant's quarterly numbers, wondered aloud whether I'd considered hiring a financial manager to lighten my load. At 7:15, I excused myself. "Headache," I said. "Wedding planning stress." I left a glass of iced tea on the counter and walked upstairs. In the spare bedroom, I opened the tablet Claire had configured. 3 camera feeds showed my kitchen in sharp definition. Ryan waited 30 seconds. Then he stood, walked to the base of the stairs, and listened. Satisfied I was gone, he returned to the kitchen. He reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small plastic bag containing white powder. He opened the bag, tapped the powder into my iced tea, stirred it with a spoon from the drawer, wiped the spoon with a paper towel, and tucked the bag back into his pocket. 51 seconds. He'd done this before. When I came back downstairs, he handed me the glass. "Hydration helps with headaches," he said warmly. I took the glass. My phone rang on cue, the timer Claire had set. Oh, that's Sophie, let me take this. I turned away, keeping the glass level. With my other hand, I grabbed the second identical glass Claire had placed behind the bread box that morning, already filled with clean tea. I set the clean glass in the sink as if I'd poured it out. The contaminated glass I slid into a padded evidence bag hidden inside the bread box, sealing it with gloved fingers. Claire had drilled this with me 4 times. The chain of custody had to be perfect. When I turned back, Ryan was watching me. For 1 second, his expression was flat, empty, like staring into a window with no one home. Then the smile returned. I should let you rest, he said. Big weekend coming up. I walked him to the door, watched his taillights disappear down the coastal road. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and shook for 10 minutes. Claire collected the evidence that night. Dr. Whitfield had results by morning. Lorazepam, he said. A benzodiazepine. The dose in that glass could have caused significant disorientation, memory impairment, and loss of motor control. In someone your age, Margaret, repeated doses could mimic dementia convincingly enough to fool a court-appointed evaluator. We had video. We had lab results. We had a pattern spanning 3 states and at least 2 prior victims. The engagement party was Saturday. We met at Patricia's office on Thursday. Me, Patricia, Claire, Dr. Whitfield, and Sheriff Dan Kowalski of Knox County. The sheriff watched the video twice. His face hardened the second time. I can arrest him tonight, Sheriff Kowalski said. No, I said. Everyone looked at me. We do it at the engagement party. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Margaret, if we arrest him quietly, Sophie will always wonder. She'll think I overreacted, that there was some explanation. She might even blame me. But if she sees the evidence herself, in front of witnesses, with no room for Ryan to spin a story, she'll know. I looked at each of them. And he won't be able to run. He'll be surrounded by 80 people, Claire nodded. It also locks down Ethan. They'll both be there. Sheriff Kowalski studied me for a long moment. All right, I'll be there plain clothes. 2 deputies outside, Claire on the perimeter. Patricia, you'll have the documentation. Everything, Patricia confirmed, including signed statements from Catherine Wallace and Michelle Chen. They've agreed to come forward now that we have hard evidence. That night, I drove to the cemetery. Richard's headstone was simple gray granite. Richard James Holloway, 1957, 2022. Chef, husband, father, fed everyone, loved one. I sat on the grass the way I used to sit on our porch while he prepped tomorrow's specials late into the evening. I think I've got him, Richard, I said. I think we're going to be okay. The wind off the bay carried the smell of salt and pine, and for just a moment I could hear him. You were always the tough one, Margaret. I just made the soup. Friday night, Sophie called me. Her voice was strange, thin, stretched tight over something she was trying to hold together. Mom, can I come over? Tonight? She arrived at 9. Her eyes were red. She sat at the kitchen table where Ryan had sat 2 days ago and put her face in her hands. I found something, she said. In Ryan's laptop bag. He left it at my apartment Wednesday after your dinner. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a charger. And I found a folder. My heart hammered. There were printouts, she whispered. About conservatorship law. About how to get power of attorney over an elderly parent. And there were notes in his handwriting. She looked up at me, tears streaming. Mom, he wrote your name. He wrote estimated net worth with a question mark. He wrote timeline for filing. I reached across the table and took her hands. There's more, she said. I looked at his email on the laptop. He'd been talking to someone named Ethan about us. About our family. About how much the restaurants are worth. He called you, she choked. He called you an easy target. Sophie's hands shook in mine. I held them tighter. I know, sweetheart, I said. I've known for weeks. Her head snapped up. I told her everything. Patricia's investigation, Claire's surveillance, the 2 women before her, the video of Ryan drugging my tea, the lab results. She listened without interrupting, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, What do we do? We expose him, tomorrow, at the engagement party, in front of everyone. I watched something shift in her eyes. The hurt didn't disappear, but something harder grew around it, like oyster shell forming over a wound. I want to be the one who does it, she said. I want to look at him and tell him I know, in front of everyone. Are you sure? She straightened her shoulders. Dad always said the truth tastes bitter, but it feeds you. I'm sure. That's my girl, I said. Saturday evening. The Harbor View Inn. 80 guests in a private function room overlooking Camden Harbor. White flowers, candlelight, champagne. Ryan stood near the entrance, greeting guests with that radiant smile, Ethan beside him playing the loyal best friend. Sophie wore the blue dress she'd bought for the occasion. She looked beautiful and terrified and brave. I spotted Sheriff Kowalski near the bar, looking like any other guest. Claire stood by the side entrance. Patricia sat at a table near the front, a leather portfolio on her lap. We waited until after appetizers. Until Ryan had shaken every hand, charmed every aunt, told his rehearsed stories about how he'd fallen for Sophie the moment they'd met. Then Sophie stood. She'd chosen the moment herself, right after Ryan had raised his glass for a toast. Before you toast, she said, her voice carrying across the room. I need to say something. Ryan's smile flickered. Baby, he said, you'll get your turn. My turn is now. Sophie faced the room. 3 weeks ago, my mother started noticing things about Ryan that didn't add up. Questions about our family's finances, interest in property values, research into conservatorship law. She investigated because that's what mothers do. They protect their children even when the children don't know they need protecting. The room went still. 2 days ago, I found evidence on Ryan's laptop confirming everything she suspected, notes about our net worth, emails planning how to take control of my mother's assets, conversations with his partner, she pointed at Ethan, about how to make an elderly woman appear mentally incompetent. Ryan's face went white. Sophie, stop. You're confused. You're stressed about the party and I'm not confused, Sophie said, her voice rising. And neither is my mother. You drugged her tea on Wednesday night. We have video of you pouring sedatives into her drink. We have lab results. We have your real history. Catherine Wallace. Michelle Chen. You've done this before? The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, people standing. I stood beside my daughter. His name is Ryan Prescott, I said. And unlike his previous victims' families, we're not paying him to disappear quietly. We're letting everyone in this room see exactly who he is. Patricia rose, holding up the portfolio. I'm Patricia Eng, Mrs. Holloway's attorney. I have video evidence, laboratory confirmation of drugging, full background documentation, and signed statements from 2 prior victims. This is not a family disagreement. This is attempted elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. Ryan's mask disintegrated. His eyes darted around the room, searching for exits, allies, anything. You can't prove this, he said, but his voice cracked. We already have, I said. Sheriff Kowalski stepped forward, badge visible. Ryan Prescott, you're under arrest for attempted poisoning, conspiracy to commit elder abuse, and fraud. Ethan bolted for the side door. Claire was already there. He made it 4 steps before a deputy caught his arm. They handcuffed him against the wall while 80 people watched. Ryan didn't fight. When the handcuffs clicked, something in him collapsed. Not the charm, not the act, but the structure holding it all up. He looked suddenly small. Sophie watched them lead him out. Her hand found mine, and she squeezed so hard my knuckles ached. I squeezed back. After the patrol cars left, the room didn't know what to do. Some guests hugged us, others cried. Sophie's college roommate brought her water without being asked. Someone dimmed the lights. Someone else turned off the music. It was strange and awful and necessary. Sophie and I didn't stay. We drove home in silence, parked in the driveway, and sat on the porch looking out at the bay. The moon made a silver road across the water. Richard had loved this view. He'd said once that Maine taught you what was real. The cold, the fog, the tide. You couldn't fake any of it. I should have seen it sooner, Sophie said. You did see it, I told her. You found the laptop. You figured it out yourself before I could even tell you. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We were both That's what mothers and daughters do, I said. 4 months later, in November, the leaves had turned and the harbor was quiet. Ryan was convicted on 6 charges, sentenced to 7 years in a Maine state prison. Ethan received 4. Catherine Wallace and Michelle Chen both testified. Their statements revealed that Ryan and Ethan had been running their scheme for at least 5 years, possibly longer. Federal investigators were looking into additional cases in Connecticut and Vermont. Sophie moved back to Camden temporarily. She took over the design refresh of our oldest restaurant location, the one Richard had started in 1989. New interiors, same recipes. She joked that she was finally using her degree for the family business. She'd started therapy. Some weeks were harder than others. One evening, she came home from a session and sat in the kitchen for a long time before saying, "The worst part isn't that he lied. It's that I believed him." "That's not weakness," I said. "That's being human. Trusting people is how you love them." Ryan exploited that. "It doesn't mean you were wrong to try." She nodded slowly. She didn't look convinced yet. But she would be. Healing isn't a straight line. I'd learned that from 34 years of nursing. I told her the full truth about our finances, the $8 million, the trusts Richard had established, the patents on his signature sauces that still generated licensing revenue. Her eyes went wide. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because your father believed money should be invisible. He wanted you to build your own life first, to know who you were before you knew what you had." She was quiet for a while. Then she laughed, a real laugh. "Dad was the richest man in Maine, driving a truck with 200,000 miles on it. 240, I corrected. He was very proud of that. In December, I added a bench to Richard's garden. The inscription read, "Richard Holloway, builder of tables, feeder of hearts." Sophie planted winter jasmine around it, the kind that blooms in cold weather. We sat on that bench on a Sunday afternoon, the harbor gray and still below us. "Do you think you'll trust someone again?" I asked her. She thought about it. "Eventually. Not soon. But yeah." "Good. Mom?" "Yes? Thank you. For seeing what I couldn't. For being the nurse who reads the chart even when the patient says they're fine." I put my arm around her. "That's the job, sweetheart. It never really ends." We sat there as the afternoon faded, as the lobster boats rocked in the harbor, as the first stars appeared over Penobscot Bay. The restaurant lights glowed along the waterfront. Richard's restaurants, still feeding people, still standing. He wasn't here, but he was everywhere. In the recipes, the buildings, the garden, the daughter he'd raised to be stronger than she knew. We'd protected what mattered. Not the money, not the property, not the business. Each other. Looking back now, I see how close we came. If I'd ignored those early questions about the restaurants, if I'd told myself I was just a paranoid old woman, if I'd waited even one more week, God gave us instincts for a reason. 34 years of reading patients' vital signs taught me that the body speaks before the mouth does, and Ryan's body had been screaming wrong from the very first visit. The lesson I want to leave you with is this. Wealth isn't about the number in your account. It's about having the resources to defend your family when predators show up wearing a charming smile and a pressed linen shirt. Richard understood that. He built our life quietly, not to impress anyone, but to create a safety net strong enough to catch us when someone tried to pull the ground out from under our feet. Stories like this one happen every day. Elderly women targeted, families manipulated, legacies stolen. Ryan's playbook is textbook elder abuse. If you're watching this and thinking of someone in your life, a mother, a grandmother, an aunt who might be vulnerable, don't wait like I almost did. Ask the hard questions. Verify the charming stranger. Protect your people before the danger becomes undeniable. And if you're that mother or grandmother yourself, listen to me. Your instincts aren't paranoia. Your suspicions aren't jealousy. You've earned every ounce of wisdom that comes with age, and the people who love you need you to use it. If this story helped you see the red flags, if it reminded you to protect someone you love, please share it. Subscribe to Sapphire Revenge for more true-life lessons wrapped in storytelling. And comment below, did you see the warning signs from the beginning, or did Ryan almost fool you too? Final note, This content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the core lessons about recognizing financial predators and protecting elderly family members are very real. If this style isn't for you, that's completely okay. Please seek content that fits your needs.